up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, I'm excited to have Vij on with us, and Vij has an amazing story where he's definitely not like kind of the typical candidate that we usually work with, but despite all of that, he was able to kind of overcome all the challenges that he had and land a very, very sweet job in sales and trading. And so I wanted to come on here and talk to you guys today, just so you can hear about how he was able to do that. And hopefully, some of the advice that he's going to share along the way will also help you guys in your own process as well. So with that said, Vij, I want to, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be here and talk to us today. And if you don't mind, you can maybe start off by introducing yourself real quick so that our audience can kind of get a sense for who you are.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thanks for having me on, Sam. So my name's Vij Sivalingam, and I was a college graduate in the class of 2021. I came from a small liberal arts school. And although it was smaller, it does have a pretty strong matriculation into Wall Street for its size relative to other liberal arts schools. But when I graduated, my first role for about a year and a half, it ended up being because of my recruitment period. I worked at S&P Global in their market intelligence division. And we sat on a desk that covered the software that we provided equity capital markets desks across the whole street. And that role was a bit, it was kind of tangential too. It was somewhat related, but not really many direct transferable skills. When recruiting into either banking, research, or sales and trading. But I stumbled across Wall Street Mastermind. I think it was advertised on my Instagram, and it really struck me because I saw right off the bat that is pretty differentiated from the other services that are offered out there.
Yeah.
Those being like Wall Street Prep, Wall Street Oasis, which kind of have large libraries and like a 400 bank question guide. Those are the typical resources that candidates who are trying to break in will use. But I really saw the amount of detail and attention that was provided to people who signed up for the service. And, after a few conversations, I was quickly sold on it. I think that
Gotcha.
one of the things that really appealed to me at that time was that, so this was in June of 2022, and I had started my first role in July of 21. So I was just approaching a year. Macro was deteriorating. So I really wanted something that would help me go through the recruiting process in the most efficient and aggressive manner possible. And that's just something that wasn't offered anywhere else except for Wall Street Mastermind.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Well, we could definitely dive into all that, but thanks for that introduction. I guess before we kind of get into some of the things that happened along the way, can we kind of, people always want to know right up front, what was the final outcome of this recruiting journey for you? Like, where did you get an offer from?
Right, right. So I just started this past month at Jefferies. I'm in their sales and trading division in their equities business. My desk specifically is research sales. So most of Wall Street Mastermind matriculates into banking, but just a little overview of the sales and trading business. You can have salespeople as well as sales traders. I will be a salesperson. I'm still taking my series examinations right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the offer right before, I want to say probably around December 10th.
Okay.
And it took about maybe 3+ weeks of interviewing. Actually, I had 2 super days. Each of them were with 5 or more people. And I had to take off work half day each to go in. But I was feeling pretty confident and that the interviews were all going well. So it was
Yeah.
something I was happy to do.
Gotcha. How did you feel when you finally got the offer? Like, talk to us a little
Yeah,
bit, like what that was like.
yeah, it was definitely, one of the most gratifying moments in my life, I'd say. I mean, getting accepted into college and maybe making a sports team here, but this is definitely without parallel, probably the most gratifying and validating moment, I'd say, just
Why is
because of
that?
the amount. Why was that?
Yeah.
I'd say the concentrated amount of time and effort that I had to put towards this. I mean, it was, I mean, it's talked about in your opening modules, just the sort of mindset that you have to have in undertaking the recruiting process, and getting that outcome
Mhm.
at a good firm in a role that I was excited about. It just couldn't have been better.
Yeah. And like when you think about this job versus the job you were doing at S&P, like I mean, I don't know how much you were making at S&P, but is this a big step up for you in terms of compensation
Yes.
and just everything?
Yeah, step function higher would be the underestimate. I mean, I've over doubled,
Wow. Okay.
so
Um,
100%.
wow. Is that just base salary, or do you guys get bonus too, or?
Oh no, with potential range of the discretionary bonus. But I
Okay.
mean, base is already quick math. I mean, it's like 30-40% higher.
Gotcha. Okay. So base is 30 to 40% higher, and then if you get the bonus that you expect to get, it would be basically double what you were making before.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing, man. Super happy for you because obviously, especially at the start of your career, uh, it's like usually once you start a job or once you start going down a certain career path, like most students don't know this when they listen to these interviews, but like once you start somewhere, it's very hard to um, have step function changes to your compensation if you're just like, climbing the corporate ladder at your company and trying to get promoted every,
Right.
couple of years. Like you might get like a couple of percentage points increase year over year. Um, and in reality, with the way that inflation is going, like basically you're not getting any increase at all when you're only getting a couple percentage points, right? And so
Yeah.
like to be able to get like a step function increase to your compensation is important, especially at the beginning, because how much you're making at the beginning of your career, um, it doesn't just affect that one year, it affects kind of like the trajectory
Mhm.
after that, right? Like if your trajectory before was if we were to like plot out your earning per year, like maybe it was like increasing at this type of slope, but now like, not only is the beginning point higher, but also the slope is also steeper, right?
Right.
And so over time, that gap is actually going to widen in terms of what you would have been making had you stayed on your original path versus what you are now going to be making 5 to 10 years from now, right?
Of course.
So that's awesome, man. I'm super happy for you. I guess you kind of already talked a little bit about why you want to join Wall Street Mastermind, but uh, as someone who's kind of like already graduated at the time and trying to break in, I mean, did you have any doubts as to like, hey, is this even possible? Like, is it too late? Like, is my
Mhm.
experience relevant enough? Like, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your head as you were, kind of thinking about, hey, like whether Wall Street Mastermind is something you should invest in or not? Because I don't know. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that when you were making this decision to join, um, it was probably felt like a pretty big decision to you, and also it's like you want to make sure that the investment that you're making
Right.
is worthwhile, right? So like,
Mhm.
did you, or I don't know if your parents were involved in the decision, but like, did you guys uh, have any like concerns or hesitation or skepticism, and if so, like, how did you overcome that?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. So I'd say that the place I was in prior to Wall Street Mastermind, I mean, within that, my first year, like end of 2021, your markets were good, the job market was great. And I'd sent out a few feeler emails to more senior people in my network that I had contacted previously in my during my undergrad years, like alumni of my school who were MDs at banks, and I was only a couple months into my first role, and the responses I got were, thanks for reaching out and for touching base again, but this is really early, so maybe circle back in a bit. Um, and as we got into 2022, I mean, inflation was already running rampant pretty early on. It's funny you mentioned the compensation increase because I remember getting a bump in my salary pay that was like 3.5%. You know, I'm losing that to inflation completely.
Yeah,
It was at 7+% at the time.
yeah,
So I really the need for urgency started to become more and more apparent to me. And
um,
you know, when presented with the opportunity of Wall Street Mastermind, I mean, it's definitely a significant financial investment in yourself, but it really convinced me that if I'm going to do this and commit that amount of money to this, there's no way however long it takes, that I don't come out of this landing a seat somewhere where I want.
gotcha. So you basically just like you wanted to get out of your current situation so badly that you were willing to do whatever it took, and
Yeah.
this is almost like, I mean, it's not easy to break in after you've already graduated, and so this is kind of almost like a lifeline that just kind of appeared, and you're like, you just sounds like you actually kind of really just trusted it, and I'm sure you did your due diligence, but once you found this and you did your due diligence, you kind of just decided like, yeah, this is what I want to do, basically.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. I
gotcha.
think for the reasons of, one, the service just seemed superior and seemed like what I needed to get my mind focused and really, working two jobs at once, essentially. My recruitment process ended up taking 6 months, but I think that with the amount that I invested, there was, it just made it all the more real and urgent.
Yeah,
I feel like if I didn't sign up, then it would be easy to, not commit to that process and really find myself where I want to be.
yeah, gotcha. Okay, makes sense. So had you done any recruiting prep on your own prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind then? Whether it was like, I don't know, did you try to recruit and lateral in on your own at all? Or did you only like wait until after you joined to start really doing that? Or maybe also like back when you were in college, did you ever
Mhm.
have to recruit into banking or just Wall Street jobs in general?
Yeah. Yeah. So during my undergrad experience, I'll give you a brief walkthrough of that. In the first 2 years, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. My freshman year, I took pre-med classes. Then my sophomore year, I was a Chinese major because I studied in high school.
Okay.
And we had a strong school of commerce. So my sophomore year, I tried out a few business classes. And at that point, I declared for a business major in conjunction with my Chinese major. My
Mm,
junior fall, I studied abroad in Shanghai.
mm,
So the first 2 summers of college, my freshman and sophomore summers, I was interning in the music industry at a label and a PR firm and management company. Um, and I just quickly realized, I mean, going into my sophomore summer, I realized that the industry wasn't for me. While I'm, super interested in culture and music still, I just felt like I needed an environment and a profession that was really going to be intellectually challenging and stimulating to me.
mm,
Um, and so I started to shift my sights towards finance and banking in particular. So while I was in China, my junior fall, I was, 12 hours ahead, and I recruited with maybe two or three different banks. It was Piper, Citizens Bank in Atlanta, and I had maybe like a first round with a call with Lincoln, but I really wasn't prepped to the level that I should have been at all.
mm,
And then the same similar thing the following summer, um, going into my senior year. I had a handful of banking interviews that I'd networked into, but I truly wasn't prepped. So maybe my behaviorals were strong, but I mean on a technical side and yeah, I mean, relative to where I came out of this service, my recruiting skills and preparation was very low. And prior to signing up this past year in June, No, I had not even started to revisit behavioral and technicals. I still had some stuff from undergrad, but I had started to send out some networking emails, but not nearly at the level that I would once I signed up.
Gotcha. So it sounds like basically you recruited a little bit your junior and senior year. You didn't do anything your first 2 years. You recruited some your junior and senior year in college, and then you didn't do anything after you graduated. But recruiting junior and senior year of college, obviously, given where the recruiting timeline is nowadays, that's very late in the process. And it
Right?
sounds like because your first 2 years you didn't really focus on like building your resume and getting relevant experience in the industry, you probably weren't like even by junior or senior, you probably weren't like the most competitive candidate on paper either. Is that right?
No, no,
Gotcha.
absolutely.
And then you also like you got some interviews, but you didn't really like. I mean, what did you use to prepare for those interviews? Are you just using like interview guides or like are you
Yeah, the large question banks and interview guides. Um, for the behavioral aspect, I would go to our career office. That's why I'd say that I was stronger than my technical skills at the time. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, those resources are large and cumbersome and not nearly as streamlined and efficient as what you offer in your modules.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I guess that's kind of a good segue then. Like, so once you joined Wall Street Mastermind, back in June of last year, like over the last 6 months, like leading up to your offer, like kind of walk us through some of the things that you were doing from a recruiting prep standpoint. Like, what did you do inside the program, and like what do you feel like? What were some of the biggest differences between how you used to go about it versus how you did go about it this time? Because I think a lot of people, that's what they're trying to understand is like, well, what could possibly be so different, right? Because
Yeah.
you're just prepping regardless, like whether you do it on your own or whether you have, someone like us kind of coaching you through it, like, aren't you doing the same things or are you not?
Yeah, I'd say you're definitely not doing the same thing. I mean, just me as a person, I'd like to say, I have some like a pretty high level of intrinsic motivation, but relative to, the rest of the the recruiting pool and candidates out there, it became evident to me that I was not even, not very close to being a competitive candidate in regards to I would say just joining the pack and seeing how bad everybody wants it just motivates me to be that much more competitive. I think that the mindset, one of the biggest takeaways I've had from the entire program is um, objection handling and how we deal with rejection. And I think that was one of the most powerful pieces. It's in an early module and video, but
Mm-hmm.
um, walking you through my process. So I joined in June. I actually got, some a call for the ECM interview at Wells Fargo. So I kind of scrammed through the modules to get, at least a somewhat basic level of proficiency on the technical side.
Yeah.
Fast forward through July, that didn't go anywhere. Macro again was deteriorating severely at this time. So then in July, I had equity research interviews with CS and Citi and a few teams. So it would start for research. It would mainly start with the director of research and oversees the whole department. And then, there were a few open opportunities, like a couple different teams, coverage teams recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would then interview with either the associates or the senior analyst and research the MD and director is referred to as analyst.
Yeah.
Uh, and in preparation for that, I'd say that the technical side and your banking preparation is very relevant for research interviews. I mean, I was asked a lot of the same evaluation and accounting questions. I would say there are a few things that are more stress, then that would be your stock pitch. And analysts are really concerned with how you think about when they ask you general market sentiment and just like talk to me about markets, about a company. They're really concerned with how you think of quarter on quarter movements. Um, but your template still had a quite robust piece and advice for the stock pitch, and utilizing that as well as other people in my network. I have an older brother, I should say, who's 11 years my elder, and he's been in the industry since then. He started in research and has moved into equity sales. So yeah, I think the other piece of Wall Street Mastermind is just encouraging you to exhaust and turn over every stone in your network and then expand it from there. And over the course of those 6 months, I really had done that. There were people that I touched base with in college, but when you're recruiting and working at the same time, I mean, you're really trying to fill every bit of your day with as many calls, interviews as you can. And
Yeah.
I think just those reps, like you get better with each and every one. There's something to be learned from every call that I was lucky enough to get. And then in every interview, that's another piece that I really appreciate is the detailed note taking and self performance review. I remember you were mentioning your process when you had broken in after the financial crisis. You interviewed with what 15, 20 banks, and
Yeah.
ended up being the last one that you interviewed with and ended up getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that having a lengthy, grueling process isn't necessarily fun at all when you're in it, but and it's not ideal. Obviously, you'd like to capitalize, and a lot of what you focus on is efficiency and um, just improving your yield on all of the emails and calls and interviews that you take.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of wandered off there.
Yeah. Gotcha. So I guess like maybe I'll ask you a related but slightly different question, but was there anything that you did in the program in terms of preparation or in terms of things you learned that you would say one really helped you and two are not things that were, things that you could have just like simply figured out on your own, I guess. Like in an alternate universe where you didn't join Wall Street Mastermind and you try to navigate through this process on your own, like were there certain aspects of the program where you felt like, yeah, that was one that made me better, but also like just I could not have done that otherwise. Like anything like that.
Not have done otherwise. Yeah, I mean the technical side of it, I think your module is a lot to about 35 hours. And, the closest comparison would maybe be Wall Street Prep or those services, and it's over 100+ hours. And I had previously had access, like in my undergrad, to my peers. A few of my peers had that service. And, during COVID, when I would sit down to try to undertake that, it just seemed so daunting. And I think you really put together, I mean, it's you don't make it you don't paint an easy picture by any means, but you give a really regimented and structured view of how you can get to where you want to go. And that's something that I didn't find anywhere else, and very grateful to have found.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So basically, the technical prep was a lot more efficient
Mhm.
because of the way that we teach it, and so that ended up saving you a lot of time.
Yep.
Um, and I guess that's probably also like because you were trying to do this while you had a full-time job and were trying to recruit, right? So
Yep.
were you like doing all the prep work kind of like just after work and like on your own time, or like where did you find the time to do it?
Yeah. So before, I mean, the job I had was quite lax and comfortable, I'd say, like 9 to 5, pretty standard. Um, So I mean, I would work like every other weekend, but the weekend workload wouldn't be too heavy all the time. And our work is tied in with equity capital markets, so that deal flow was quite low throughout this summer. Um, yeah, I basically just the regiment that the program offered, it really instilled in me the type of mindset of that you have to have as a candidate to get there. And when it came to time blocking, that was crucial for me, I'd say, um, because I have my day job and also trying to be taking calls in between or after hours, and then eventually once I got started getting more hits and interviews, then I would have to really be efficient and mindful of how I was scheduling things. I mean, throughout the process, I ended up interviewing with over 8 banks and be like 13 teams. So I mean, a couple teams at a single bank, and then also an asset management shop for a private credit role. So I was casting like quite a broad net. Um, but yeah, and the objection handling piece I'd say was particularly crucial for me at the end of July, beginning of August, because I actually got, after 3+ weeks of interviewing with Citi, I got an offer for one of their research teams, only to have it basically rescinded the next week once I just disclosed. Well, here's the thing: in the application, you fill out all these disclosures, and I had written about my relationship to my brother, who's the director in sales, equity sales at Citi. But that wasn't picked up by anybody until after I had gotten an offer from the analyst, and then I was filling out post-interview, pre-hire clearance forms. Then somebody in compliance had flagged that, and basically told them that it's a conflict of interest because of any stocks that my team would be covering. Then they were worried that my brother would show those pitches, favoritism when
Yeah.
he's selling it to clients. Which, I mean, it makes sense. I see the conflict of interest, but it took a lot of wind out of my sails.
You
Um,
actually got the offer and got it rescinded because of your relationship.
yep.
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember telling my brother, and he was very supportive of me throughout the whole thing, and he's always been hard on me, and he was quite short, and his response was something along the lines of like, you don't have an option, you got to keep going, and find the next opportunity and just keep knocking down doors.
Mhm.
um yeah, I mean, things happen. He had told me a story about he was moving to a hedge fund. This is about after 5 years, 4 or 5 years of being in research. And he was at DB at the time. He had told them that he was leaving, only for the portfolio manager at the hedge fund to get fired for
Mhm.
non-performance related reasons. And then he had to come right back. So, things
Absolutely.
happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I've experienced that myself throughout my career, where there are always things that happen that are out of your control and that you can't really plan for, right? For me, it was, you know, doing my summer internship at Bear Stearns in 2007, and then that
Right.
was the summer that the two hedge funds collapsed, and nobody knew that that was going to happen, right? And then obviously did not get any return offer because of that, having to recruit for full time in 2007, which is a horrible market,
Right.
and while explaining why I didn't get a return offer to my summer internship, it was just like so many things I felt like it was going against me, that I didn't really feel like was my fault. And having to go through so many rejections because of it. And it's just like at that point, yeah, it takes this wind out of your sails, but like what can you do, right? Like, I mean, you have two options. You can either say it's too hard and give up, or which is probably what you would do, maybe if you didn't want it badly enough, or you can just kind of keep going and keep grinding until you kind of get the outcome, right? And I'm glad I kept going, because otherwise, like, we wouldn't be sitting here today. I probably would have never worked in finance, but in the end, it was all worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what was that process like when you were recruiting for full time and you went to Cal Berkeley?
Yeah, I went to Berkeley.
So how did you make that work when you're flying to New York and trying to schedule all of them back to back? And
No, I mean, like a lot of the firms that I was interviewing with were like I was mostly interviewing with like the West Coast offices, right?
got it, got it.
Berkeley's more of a target school for uh Bay Area office and maybe to some degree the LA office, but for New York, I mean, you can go to New York too, but we were definitely probably at best a semi-target school, if not like not really like maybe even non-target for some firms, you know. So
Mhm.
so yeah, traveling wasn't that big of an issue. The bigger issue was more so just like explaining why I didn't get a return offer because at the time Bear Stearns didn't give us return offers, but it still existed as a firm. Like they hadn't fully gone under yet. They hadn't been acquired
Yeah.
by Morgan for $2 a share yet. And so it was like if they had already gone under, it would have been a lot easier to explain. Right.
Mhm.
But because they hadn't gone under and they didn't give out return offers, so it was almost like the worst situation possible because everyone's questioning every single interviewer is questioning like was it really because Bears are struggling, or is it because like you're just a bad intern? Right?
Mhm.
And so, but regardless, like I mean, can't make like I don't want to make excuses, or even if it's a legitimate excuse, nobody really cares. Nobody's gonna feel bad for you, right?
Right.
And so you just have to kind of bite the bullet and just keep going until you get the outcome that you want, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or
I
or
think,
you don't. Even if you don't get the outcome that you want, you at least know that hey, did my best. I left everything out there, and there's literally nothing more that I could have done, and I didn't give up halfway through, and I can live with the results. Right?
of course, of course. And I think coming close and, facing rejection while it, like we said, it takes a lot of wind out of your sails. I think the piece that made a difference for me was just using that and how close I came and every interview I would get to reinforce in my mind that I not only I'm capable of being in the seat, but that I deserve it. So I'm just keen on continuing to prove that I'm the one for the job, and whoever is going to give me a look is won't regret it.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I guess we've been talking for a while, so I wanna I think this is a good segue into probably the last question I typically like to ask in these interviews, which is, now that you come out the other side, do you have any advice for, maybe just other people that are maybe going through recruiting now, right? Maybe other people who also graduated without starting banking first and or starting sales and trading or just working on Wall Street in general, and then like they want to lateral in to a
Right.
front office Wall Street role. Like, what what kind of advice would you have for people like that, or maybe it could be a piece of advice that someone gave you along the way that you found to be really helpful and beneficial for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. So I mean, aside from the themes that we've already been talking about, so one piece of advice that I got that was super helpful was never to get too hung up on one job or one role, because there is always more out there, even in down markets. Um, if you keep looking and keep turning over stones, there will be opportunities. And if you're regimented enough and have the right mindset, you will eventually be able to make one stick. I think that mindset you have in your module is don't is looking at rejection as you're one step closer to a yes, and that really made the biggest difference for me. When you're in the thick of it, and it ebbed and flowed. I mean, like I said, I had quite a bit of this, quite a big slew of interviews, but there were times where I didn't have any interviews coming, and I was sending out networking emails, and it didn't seem like I was getting a high yield on those. Not enough people were responding. Um, but if you just keep at it and remain consistent and control what you can, um, then I think you'll find it will pay dividends in the long run.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, for sure. I was accidentally went on mute there for some reason, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. I think that's great advice. A lot of times, people are like 3 feet away from gold, and then that's kind of like when they give up, right? Because you can't see that you're that close until you're on the other side. And so, again, for me, I always talk about like it comes down to like knowing your why, like why do you want to do this and how important is it to you, right? For me, back when I was getting rejected left and right, um, I had no quit because it was too important for me. Like I had already invested so much. I had already spent the past like, 2 to 3 years being singularly focused on achieving this goal. And so like failure for
Mm,
me was just not an option. Right. And so um and sometimes that's what it takes. It's just like outlasting everybody else. Right.
right,
Um
right.
but also like having, I think the other thing that I would say about you is that like, you really had the belief in yourself that even though you didn't have like the prototypical profile of someone who's trying to get into banking, even though you were already graduated and, even though you were working in a job that wasn't necessarily like the most relevant thing, um, a lot of people would use those as like self-limiting beliefs or excuses for, oh, maybe why they shouldn't bother or why they shouldn't go for this. Right. And I think like if you believe that you shouldn't be going for this because you're not going to make it, well, you're probably going to be right. Right. But also, if you believe that, hey, I can do this despite all of these challenges, it'll just be a little bit harder, but I can figure out a way to overcome it. Like you're probably also going to be right. Right. So it just depends on like what do you want to choose to believe? Right.
Mhm.
And I really think that's like half the battle. Right. So I think that's great advice. So thanks for sharing that. I guess for our audience, for those of you that are still with us, if you're listening to this and maybe you're in a similar situation, maybe you already graduated, maybe you've been working for the last year or two, or in a different field, right? You're not working on Wall Street. Maybe working on Wall Street has always been your dream, but for whatever reason, due to your past circumstances, you weren't able to get in time, and now you're wondering like, hey, is it too late? Or can I still get in? Or is my experience relevant enough? I would say like, I would encourage you to err on the side of, uh, you know, thinking positively about it. And um, where there's a will, there's a way, usually more often than not. Right. But I think the important thing is obviously it's not going to be easy. And so what kind of help can you get to go out and really like maximize your chances of getting into one of these roles, right? Which is obviously very, very competitive, right? So if you guys are looking for that type of help, I want to encourage you guys to reach out to us and speak to us. We can't help every single one of you. I can tell you that right now. Like depending on what your specific situation is, we may or may not be able to help you. But that's why we always want to talk to every single person first, so that we can really get to understand your situation better and give you an honest assessment of whether we can actually help you or not, right? And so like um if you guys are interested in doing that, the first thing you can do is go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And what you can do is you can book a call with someone in our program, someone who's already gone through our program and recruited successfully, and have already gotten an offer from one of these top banks. And you can talk to them. You can ask them for advice on recruiting. You can talk to them about their own experience and how they got their job. You can ask them about the program if you want. You can ask them about anything. It's just a free virtual coffee chat. And then, like, based on that conversation, if after that you're still interested in learning more, you still want to talk to us, you potentially want to explore working with us, then you can let them know and they can help you set up additional follow-up call with our team, right? Or if you don't feel like this is something that you want to pursue, no worries. Then you just, kind of like take the advice that you get on that call. It's on the house and you just go out and do whatever you want to do with it and implement it on your own, right? So either way, our goal is to just provide as much value to you as possible, as long as it's, help that you actually want, right? So if you guys are interested in doing that, go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Again, the street's abbreviated, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you guys. All right. With that said, Vij, I want to thank you so much for taking all this time out of your day to just come on here and share your story with us. And really, really happy for you that you were able to, again, overcome really, really significant odds and all the challenges that you had going against you to, get such a phenomenal offer, to really change your career trajectory, get that step function increase in your conversation. I think all those are really, really great things. And so, yeah, huge congrats. And obviously you worked super hard for it and absolutely deserving of it. And I think, couldn't have happened to a better guy. So I'm super happy for you, man. And, I'll definitely look forward to staying in touch in the future. And if there's anything else we can continue to help you with, like, definitely don't be a stranger.
Of course. Thank you so much, Sam. It's really been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. So, guys, that's gonna be it for today. We're gonna wrap it up here. So, you know, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, all right.